Welcome back. It would seem as though the headlights that I did on this, you didn't quite get the full story. Here it is. So, as I said before, you didn't quite get the full story with the headlights. They look lovely. Don't get us wrong, I really like looking at them, especially in the bonnet shut and everything. It all looks nice, you know. But yeah, I didn't get the full story with it. So first of all, side lights aren't actually on. The side lights are wired into DRLs. The strip light is actually the DRL. It's a bit bright for a side light. So I need to swap that round, put some side lights back into there and put the DRLs on an ignition feed live. A couple of little problems in itself. We'll go through them in a minute. The other issue that I didn't know about was the indicators don't actually work unless the engine's running. It obviously needs just that little tiny little bit of extra voltage just to kick the indicator in. And even then, to be perfectly honest, the indicators aren't really the brightest. They're not as bright as they could be. They are a little bit dim. They're all right at night time when you can see them and it's lit up, but through the day on a sunny day you can hardly see them. I'm kind of hoping with the DRLs being on through the day, when they go out, it might help the appearance of that indicator coming on. It might stand out a little bit more, you know, having one light out and it flashing instead. So what we'll do is I'll explain how I'm going to do it all in just a minute. But first, I'll show you exactly what I mean. So that's the side lights on there. You can see they've come on. That should be the DRLs. That should come on with the ignition. I put the ignition on. I get absolutely nothing, but that's the indicator there. Now you can see how the light itself's gone out, but there's just not quite enough power to make this one flash. And you can see it's on, but it's just not making this one flash. So hoping I'm going to cure that problem with a relay or two. For those of you that have never really worked with relays and are quite frightened of electrics and stuff, relays are actually wonderful things. Effectively, they're just nothing more than a switch. So what you would do is you would use something with a small current to trigger a big current. So for argument's sake, you could use, say, a tiny little on-off toggle switch to power something that will draw a lot of power, like a massive big set of spotlights. You wouldn't want to put the power for the spotlight through the little toggle switch direct because it'll burn the switch out. Set fire to your car, burn the wiring out, the whole lot, major nightmares. But with these things, you can power anything up to a 30 amp, which is pretty standard sort of. 30 amp is about what you do on a car, unless you like starter motors. I think starters and that go a bit bigger than that, but I'm not sure. So anyway, don't be daunted by, there we go there, the amount of pins there are underneath. This is a 5-pin relay, so it triggers off and on. So what you've got is, this switch live here is coming in to number 85, goes through the little solenoid, goes down to ground, so it completes the circuit through there, so it energizes this solenoid here. In turn, pulls this switch over from 87A to 87. Now, what we've got is, we've got effectively the 30 amp live, which I'm going to take straight from the battery through a fuse, straight into this. Obviously, when it's switched on, so when the ignition switched on, this solenoid's energized, flicking the relay over to here, which completes the circuit and goes out and gives you a switched live back out. Now, I've had a look on the car, and this ignition live that I can find, the best one and nearest one I can find is from the reverse switch. Obviously, I don't want to go and power loads of lights and stuff off the reverse switch because it might have implications on the fuse that's powering all that. So I'm going to just effectively just take a signal from it. It's a very low amperage signal. It'll not affect any other relays on the car. It'll just be a little standalone system so that I can then trigger a bigger current. Now, not that for 1 minute I believe these will draw 30 amp current, but I'll then have a switch live at the front that I can tap off anytime I like. And just all I need to do then is just change the size of the fuse. The relay will be doing all the work. So from there, right, you have to excuse my handiwork, but from there, we put it through another relay. So remember the switch live comes out here when the ignition's on. So it comes, the switch live comes all the way out, goes back into terminal 30 on the next relay. So that will only become live when the ignition's on. Yeah. 86 goes to ground, 85 goes to the side lights. So when I switch the side lights on, it energizes this solenoid, switching this over to this dead terminal that goes nowhere. So it'll switch the DRLs off. Forgot to mention, this will be live when the ignition's on, which is permanently connected to the DRL. So as soon as you put the ignition on, the power will flow through there to ground, energize this solenoid, switch this solenoid on. Fused live, 12 volts in, comes from there. So this solenoid's then switched on, so it goes to 87, comes all the way around, goes back into 30. Now with the side light switched off, this relay will be in its relaxed position, which will feed the DRL. So as soon as the ignition's on, DRLs will come on. As soon as you put the side lights on, it energizes this side lights down there, down to ground. So that'll energize that, switch that over to the dead circuit, switching the DRLs off. That's the plan, that's how it's going to work. Now I designed it this way so that I can still, my side lights, all I'm doing is taking the signal out of the side lights. I'm not actually powering the side lights through this. I could power the side lights from this point here so that this ignition 12 volt feed would either power the DRLs or the side lights, but I want the side lights again to be uninterrupted on the car because they're sided, the fuses are sided. So all this circuit here is going to do is power the DRLs and switch over the DRLs when we go. That's literally all they're going to do. So we'll hopefully get on and do that. What I've done is I've already took the start and I've taken the bumper off the car and the bull bar off the car so I can get the headlights out, just purely so I can get into the back and carry on with a little bit of wiring. So what I'll do is I'll crack on, I'll get this wired in first. When I'm talking about relays, all I'm talking is literally like that. That's all I'm talking, just two little tiny boxes. I can even back to back them, you know, and I'll just hide them somewhere under the light so they'll not be seen. And as I say, that one signal will feed both side lights, both the RLs, sorry, and switch off so the side lights will come back on. So I need to get the headlights out, get this wiring in and get that sorted first. It's the first thing we're going to do. I'm going to deal with the indicator. So as I said, the indicator's only worked when the engine was running. Now, don't know if this will work or not. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to have to revisit it and go over a different plan somehow. But all I'm going to do is put a relay into the indicator. So if you think this is like 30-odd-year-old car nearly, the signal by the time it gets down to the indicators might be a little bit less than 12 volts because the wiring's kind of, it's not old, but the wiring's not exactly new either. You know, it has a bit of resistance to it, which drops the voltage down. So we're going to put a relay in it, which is the whole purpose of the relay, so that you can up the amps on something. So what we're going to do is indicator signal in to 85. Again, energize this because it's going straight through to ground. So it'll energize this solenoid, which will flick this over, make the connection between the fuse live in. I'll use the same fuse live as I use for the DRLs. Handy little point. Fuse live in, send it straight back out to 87. Which will give us my indicator out. So hopefully that'll give us a good solid 12 volt kick as soon as that is energized. Now, I realise this I could ideally do with some sort of sticky relay, so when you first put the indicator on, it stays on 12 volts because the indicators flash by themselves. All you need to do is give it a 12 volt signal. Fortunately, they're getting a pulse from the flashing unit. That's what the issue is. So as soon as the pulse is coming in, it's going back away again. So it's not actually staying on long enough. I'm hoping that as it comes and goes like that, I'm kind of hoping that this triggers the relay enough to give it 12 volts to allow this to kick in, actually work properly. Might work, it might not work, we will see. I've got mixed news. I've got some good and some bad. It worked. One side's worked. There's a lot of mess of wire in there. I need to tidy that up a bit. That's why this headlight's still hanging out. So this headlight's done. This headlight's not. Now, the idea for the relay on the indicator didn't work. Didn't make it any brighter at all, so I gave up on that. Put a little jumper lead in, the two cables that I'd put in. For some reason now it works with the ignition off. I don't know why, but it does. But this is how it works. So this headlight's how it should work. So when I put the ignition on, see that? Comes on. Like I say, ignore this side isn't how it should be wired. I haven't actually done this side yet, put the wire to get that side done. I put the side lights on, it switches over. Can you see the head of the side lights on? Right. Side lights off. Comes back on obviously because the ignition's still on. I do that. As you can see, it's very dim, but it does work with the ignition off. So I don't know. Anyway, I've got one more trick up my sleeve. Hold on. I've got one more trick up my sleeve. What I'm thinking about next is you can get variable flasher units. So I'm thinking we're changing the flasher unit for a variable one, just slowing the tick down a little bit so it gets 12 volts for just a little bit longer. Literally only take probably a couple of milliseconds just for it to stay on that little bit longer. And it should generate a little bit more light, so we'll do that. So what I'll do is, we'll pretty much call this done. Showed you how to wire, I've drawn it out. I showed you how to rig up a relay. I'll put a link down below, well not a link down below, I'll actually put a description or something. I'll find a way of linking it into this video, how to wire up a relay. So I've got literally the wire to tidy up there. This little yellow relay is going to come out because it's now not doing anything. Tidy up a few wires and then run this other black wire along to this headlight, and then both my headlights will do what they need to do, put the bumper back on. But for now we're going to call it, put a pin in it and call it a day on this video. I hope you've enjoyed what I'm doing. I hope it's been useful to you. I hope it'll be useful to some of you guys. Newer cars, more modern cars, probably not so much because I don't know why. Like, I don't think you can do stuff like this on more modern cars because you've got more like CAN bus systems and stuff like that, which doesn't deal well with mucking about with electric. So to be fair, quite a lot of this will be irrelevant to you guys. But on your older cars, relays, I absolutely love them. It saves you, and you can do so many things with it as well. You can switch them like two completely separate signals, so that you've got to do a sequence of things before the relay works. It's actually a really good system. But yeah, as I say, I'll have that tidied up and put back together again before the next video. Is there anything else you guys do with relays, or anything that you could suggest maybe that would make this better, or even anything that you suggest for the indicator that I am struggling a little bit with? I would like it just to be a nice bright indicator, and then that would be the headlight cracked, sorted, and then I could basically call it done properly, you know. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. We will see you guys next time. Yes.